I briefly mentioned the Banished Vault in my 2023 year-end wrap-up, which would be on this channel, except this channel didn't exist then. You can view it over here on my other channel. At the time, I thought it was an interesting little game in a year jam-packed with all kinds of good stuff, so I gave it a brief blurb in the video and moved on. But here, deep in 2024, I find myself coming back again and again to the Banished Vault, which is bizarre because from a cold, critical perspective, I don't think the Banished Vault is all that remarkable of a game. Just in its foundational design, there are many esoteric decisions. I would describe the Banished Vault as a digital board game. Its aesthetics certainly lean into this, but its crunch the numbers, resource management, and base building systems are certainly at home in a peculiar genre of overly nerdy board games, which makes the fact that the Banished Vault is a single-player only game somewhat bewildering at first. The other reason I use the digital board game label is that the Banished Vault doesn't really provide much in the way of a conventional narrative. We have some broad theming, a few proper nouns here and there, but whatever story there may be is born out of the gameplay. The game traces the outline of a galaxy and a backstory and lets your imagination do the heavy lifting. So, from the get-go, the Banished Vault is already targeting a niche audience. Players who love to do things like optimize their turn efficiency and elaborately plan their bases, who also may or may not inject their own narrative to the proceedings. This is definitely not a game for everyone. The overall production quality also doesn't do the Banished Vault many favors. In a product where interacting with the UI is the core of the experience, the clunkiness of these interfaces is a major negative on the overall game. Moving characters and inventory around could be improved greatly, and other features could really be made more intuitive. Functionality aside, the lackluster design of this user interface stands out like a sore thumb, especially when contrasted against the game's impressive hand-drawn splash art and neat ship models. So I can't help but ask, who's eager to spend a few hours alone with a complex board game that is also a bit of a hassle to play? Are we having fun yet? But that's the thing. Despite this harsh, but not all that unfair description, I find the Banished Vault to be a very compelling experience. But why though? Well, I think there's two phenomena at play here. First, I think we need to re-examine the way we evaluate games, specifically our tendency to break them down by their components. Speaking for myself, I know that I like to dissect games into three major aspects. The first aspect is the gameplay, the interactive elements, or mechanics. The second area is aesthetics, the visual style, the sound design, music, the character models, the environments. Lastly, we have the narrative component. Story, characterization, plot, themes, world building, and so on. When I evaluate the Banished Vault with this tripartite analysis, it doesn't seem all that appealing. The aesthetics are certainly a strong point, and there's adequate depth to its strategy gameplay. However, the narrative is thin, and the UI detracts from both the visual presentation and in playing the game. But an experience like the Banished Vault shows us how this component-wise criticism of games can fall short. Instead, I think we should take a step back and employ a more holistic perspective when analyzing games. It's in this bigger picture where the Banished Vault starts to make a lot more sense. To give it a name, the Banished Vault embodies a concept that I call mood. This is related to tone in film criticism. Tone refers to the summation of emotional elements for a given moment in a movie or TV show. It's how the particular story circumstances, the setting, an actor's performance, the music, the camera work, and so on all work together to convey a specific feeling. Mood is very similar to tone, but with one key difference that comes with the medium of video games. Interactivity. Tone is usually passive, while mood actively involves the audience, i.e. the player. Mood is all the tonal elements being presented to the player, plus what they are doing in the moment. And for me, the Banished Vault has an exceptionally strong mood. Starting with the narrative, we are a group of exiles aboard a cathedral ship called a Vault, who have encountered a mysterious force known only as the Gloom. The Gloom devours star systems, planets and all. Worse yet, the Gloom appears to be chasing our group of exiles. This sets the frame for our gameplay. We arrive at the edge of a new star system and have 30 turns before the gloom starts eating it from the inside out. We must balance our needs with our main overarching objective, to chronicle the Vault's voyage by constructing a scriptorium in each of 4 star systems. But for our exiles to survive the journey to the next star system, we must produce 2 units of a substance called stasis for each individual. Even then, there's attrition, as the journey takes a toll on our exiles and depletes their faith stat each hibernation. This produces steadily rising tension as we spend time in a star system and throughout the entire playthrough. We not only need to build a scriptorium and produce stasis, but we must manage our fuel and other resources such that we can maneuver our ships and build other structures to keep our exiles and our resource economy alive. There will be times where we are flush with everything we need. Other times we're just scraping by, finding ourselves needing to make some tough decisions and take some risks. And in a weird way, the clunkiness of the UI also really seems to accentuate the arduousness of this task, shuffling our resources and exiles from ships, planets, and orbital stations. All the while, the turn counter burns down and the gloom approaches. Reinforcing this mood of relentless tension and the alleviation of escape is a masterful dark ambient soundtrack courtesy of Nervous Test Pilot and Dreamtrak. The atmospheric pads, the mournful strings, the distant tolling of bells, the rising choruses, and the assorted industrial, mechanical, metallic foley all combine to sell the mystery, the darkness, and the hostility of deep space. We are alone, and our doom is always right behind us. But we always steel ourselves for whatever the void may bring and push forward. The hallmarks of great mood in a video game are immersion and flow state. In short, you know the spell of mood is working if you find yourself getting lost in a game, and I frequently found myself immersed within the cold embrace of the Banished Vault. After a while, all my external worries vanish, and I find myself solely focused on plotting my next few turns, wondering how I can get my exiles back home to the vault with as many resources as possible. And the thin narrative that I mentioned before, rather than being a liability here, is actually a major asset for this mood. This is the second phenomenon that I'd like to highlight, one that I'm calling thematic tracing. Sometimes the best thing a storyteller or world builder can do is let the audience fill in the details for themselves. We see this frequently with horror movies. Oftentimes the scariest monster is one of which we've seen a few details, but never anything definitive in its entirety. This allows the audience to conjure a monster in their imaginations that is far more personal and scary to them than anything we could ever cobble together as creators. Another example would be Star Wars. How much more effective was the original trilogy by only vaguely alluding to things, providing just enough tracing that the audience could sketch in whatever worked for them? I certainly think Star Wars lost a lot of its appeal with the advent of midichlorians or seeing what the Clone Wars actually were. So I think it's very wise of the Banished Vault to thematically trace some things for us. We have the vaults, the gloom, faith, stasis, etc. It paints a picture of a Dune-esque religious sect in space, but it doesn't give us any details about what the exiles actually believe or what most of their practices entail. There is an ideological vacuum here, allowing you to insert whatever strikes your fancy, or leave it hollow if you like. As I brought up earlier, this invites the player to forge their own narrative from the events of the gameplay. For instance, I recall one time I lost a ship full of resources and 2 of my best exiles to a hazard, which really put me in a bind. But I managed to rally with my remaining exiles and kept going. I thought a lot about what this meant in the context of the game. How did the surviving exiles take this? How would it test their faith? How would they remember the fallen? Similarly, thematic tracing creates a void that can readily be filled by interpretation. Personally, I feel a strong connection between the relentless pursuit of the gloom and the exile's inability to put down roots to my career as a game developer. The longest I ever worked at a game studio was just over 2 years, and by many accounts, I've been one of the lucky ones in this industry in that regard. The constant searching for new work, moving cross-country multiple times, the strain on personal relationships while also being hounded by rent and other bills. Yeah, I can't help but see myself in these haggard exiles. Now, thematic tracing isn't perfect, and it relies on finding a sweet spot of definition. If you define your characters and world too vaguely, your audience doesn't have much to latch onto. But if you provide too many details, there's not enough gaps in which your audience can inject themselves. It's a delicate storytelling technique, and I think the Banished Vault just barely manages to pull it off. This comes down to thematic tracing's reciprocal relationship with mood. The evocative visual and audio elements work in tandem with the gameplay to place us in this strange and mystical mindset, and the narrative provides just enough kindling should we want to build a bonfire in our imagination. The Banished Vault is a highly flawed game, but if you're receptive to it, it can create an impactful and affecting experience. It's a reminder that games can be much more than just their components. Thanks for watching. I'm releasing reviews on all manner of games on this channel, big and small, popular and obscure. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell if you'd like to hear my thoughts each week. Catch you next time.